What was the biggest plot twist that happened in your life? Joined the army to help people. Ended up having to turn my squad in for the grape and murder of an Iraqi family. Was not expecting that. I struggled with my sexuality a lot. It took me years to admit that I was gay. 10 years after coming out of the closet. I fell for a girl and it caught me completely off guard. Entered seminary planning to be a rabbi. 5 years later I'm an atheist, a teacher, and dating a Catholic. Whoops. Told this before and will again. I was a little goth girl in HS and secretly had a mad crush on an upperclassman that was a wrestler and did cross country. My cousin, who was Miss Socialite, also had a crush on him and hit on him constantly. He and I were complete opposites. We rode the same bus and I was pretty sure I was invisible to him. So one day his friends start picking on me. He gets up from the front of the bus, moves to where his bud is and I are. Sits down next to me, throws his arm around me, and they stop. This pisses off my cousin as he and I become friends and he constantly ignores her advances. She later on goes on to have me expelled by saying I had a gom and was going to blow up the school. Because she didn't like this or that her BF and I were close friends. This ruined every friendship I had. Except the one with her crush. He and I remained friends even after he moved away and then closer friends when he moved back. Today he and I are going on 4 years together. We bought a house and car. Had a daughter. And are working on plans to build our next and probably permanent home. 10 years later the itch is still greener than a Granny Smith apple. I was transferred to a division. Within a few months my new supervisor and I hated each other. She was incompetent and I spoke up when she screwed up. She made my life hell and finally decided to give me a job that she thought would make me quit. I packed up my stuff in a box and asked for help moving to my new desk. She said she didn't have anyone to spare. I was carrying my box and didn't see a spill on the floor. Ironically, just outside her office. I slipped, fell, and broke my knee. I am on permanent disability. Very legitimately. Received a huge settlement. Lifetime healthcare. Retired early. She was demoted. Then fired. Partially due to the way she handled my case. This all happened a few years ago. Recently when my husband and I were grocery shopping. I saw her in the store. I didn't want to see her. But my husband caught her eye and gave her a big thumbs up. She looked pissed. Bill was a self-made millionaire by the time he was 18 years old. That was in the mid-80s. He has been one of my best and certainly most influential friends. 25 years ago he married a girl that I did not like or trust. I told him as much but he married her weird as anyways. A few years ago she ran off with a guy she met at a roller skating rink. He apparently wooed her with his zooming around or whatever and Bill was single again. He met a girl and insisted I meet her. Bill remembered that I had not approved of his ex. We met for lunch at one of those awful buffets. This girl was beautiful. She used English like a scalpel. Working on PhD. She was awesome. But I noticed little things about her. She had obviously been to finishing school. Then why did she have fingernail polish on her cuticles and a dress from a 1985 resale rack? There was just a lot of details that didn't add up and Bill was getting ready to marry her. I told Bill that I thought she was hiding something but I didn't care. This gal was high class and hybrid. I told him she was great. Bill hadn't met her parents till the wedding. It was at their beach house in Destin. It turns out that my friend hadn't told his new bride of his formidable wealth. But she had been hiding the fact that her parents are legit billionaires. Bill deserves someone like her. The girl who I took to homecoming and the girl who I went to prom with started dating a couple of months after I took her to prom. For 17 years I thought I had 2 birthmarks on my torso. That is until my then GF was curious about them and took a very close look at them. Turns out I have an extra set of nipples. Tiny but fully formed with areolas and all. The past year has been one consistent plot twist. I enter my first year of college. Wanting to connect with my grandmother more after my grandfather passed away when bam, she ducking passes away from kidney failure. Try to take it and get my mind off of things by walking my dog more when bam, my dog passes away from leg carcinoma. I try to keep focused on my work and future and do well on my midterms in March when bam, my dad ducking passes away from surgery complications. I tell myself to keep strong and go on with my second year of college. My dad's lifelong best friend promises to teach me how to grill the way my father used to when bam, he ducking dies from a heart attack. Became widowed at the age of 27. After only 3 years of marriage. Gendisasters.com. Quit my professional job with a 2 weeks notice letter quoting John Muir. Now I make peanuts at a ski resort. I love peanuts. Edit, my bad. It was Muir. My uncle is actually my father. I'm not referring to my mother's brother. Backstory. My mom slept with 2 brothers, at separate times. In the 70s they could only give a blood test for paternity. I didn't find out until I was 14 when we all took a DNA test who my actual father was. I had a marriage of 5 years. With 2 wonderful children. A gorgeous house. 2 cars in the driveway. And money in the bank. Then plot twist, the kids could belong to any of the other half-dozen men going out with my wife. Love a good drama. I injected heroin 4 years. But never shared needles. After I had quit, a woman I was with took a steep panel and gave me the worst news. That she had Hep B. My heart was broken for her and myself. For 2 months I was sure this was the case and that I'd be dealing with this for the foreseeable future. It then turned out that while she was a brilliant person, with English as her third language, she didn't realize that negative meant she was in the clear. When she told me, I almost had a breakdown. Got asked out by the girl that told me I was too fat to date after losing over 100 pounds. My mom and I haven't really had any relationship for the past 5 years for a lot of reasons. A couple of huge parts of that being my having left the religion that I was raised in and her having severe bipolar disorder that made her nearly impossible to deal with. Which she refused to maintain treatment for. We have only spoken once in the last 5 years. And it was awful. It was about 1.5 years ago. I drove down to CA to visit her, 450 miles from me, and tried to patch things up. It ended up in a huge blowout fight and generally went as poorly as it possibly could. We never spoke again. One morning in May of this year my dad showed up at my door randomly. He and my mom had been divorced for many years, and said we needed to talk. The apartment building my mom was living in had been set on fire and she didn't make it out. I still can't believe how hard it hit me. It changed me. Maybe forever. The worst part was about 3 weeks ago. When I was trying to remember the password to an old PayPal account. I had to have it reset and it was sent to an old email address that I haven't used in years. When I logged in I found an email from her. Sent just shortly before she died. Apologizing and trying to reconnect and make amends. We had been out of contact for so long it was the last email address she had for me. But since I hadn't been using it for years I didn't get her message until months after her death. Hammy ham. I found my adoption papers in the family strongbox when I was 19. Despite having been told my whole life that my parents were my biological parents. I was pursuing this woman that I worked with and she was playing along and flirting back with me. She would often just gaze at me and hold eye contact with me in a very seductive way. I was totally hooked on her until this one day. She confessed to me that she was married to a woman. Cancer at 32. All good now, 10 years going on. January 2011. Wife pregnant. Good health. Mom alive. March 2011 through January 2012. Miscarriage. MS diagnosis for the wife. Cousin hit by train. Mom passed away from pancreatic cancer. Wife has affair with guy she met at funeral. February 2012. Wife threw me out of the house on Valentine's Day. One time I put on my pants. But then I reached into my pockets and guess what? There was $1. Had 2 cats. Adopted them at different times. And they were the same age or close to. They both got sick and had to be taken to the vet. He took blood tests on both of them. Said he noticed similarities and then ran them against each other. I don't understand what exactly he did, but it revealed that they were related. Yep. Like brother sister. They were adopted years apart. One as a kitten and one at 2 years old. Barely look alike either. Honestly couldn't believe it. Parents split when I was little. Came out to my mum and stepdad when I was 13. Phoned my dad up when I was 16 because it was time I had to let him know. Dad, I've got something to tell you. Whatever it is. I love you. I'm gay. So am I. What? This is kind of mine. And kind of my mom's. When I was a kid, I moved to a different state. And eventually made friends with a girl at my new school. We eventually ended up having a sleepover at my place one night. In the morning, her mom came over to pick her up and get to know my mom and me. When our moms got to talking, they discovered that not only were they from the same state, that nobody involved had lived in for at least 10 years, but that they had played together as kids at the same church. I will try to keep this as short as possible. My grandfather left my grandmother for another man after 35 years of marriage and the raising of 2 kids. A daughter, mom, and a slightly mentally disabled son, Drungle. It messed my grandmother up pretty bad. Fast forward 16 years. My mom dies from liver failure. Me and my kid sister are young and broke. Grandmother is old and broke. Grandfather pays for everything. Nobody says anything to him. No thanks. No condolences. Nothing. I want to go see him and talk to him. Thank him. And see how he's doing. I ask my grandmother where he lives. On the grounds that he told me he had something important he needed to tell me. Pulled out of my ass. Obviously. But grandmother bursts into tears and confesses that grandfather is not my mom's real father. She had a whirlwind romance with some traveling jackass conman who left her as soon as he could. Grandfather offered to marry grandmother and raise my mom as his own. Mom never knew. I was stunned. My grandmother was always really judgmental of other people. And looked down on anyone else in this exact situation. She was sobbing at this point. And I snapped at her to stop because blood never really played all that heavily into what me and my sister considered family. And that she shouldn't consider it either. Anyway, that's how I found out one of my family's biggest secrets on accident. And then promptly didn't give a shit. Neat plot twist. Though. Edit. Clarity on crazy pants familial terms. Was a rebellious teenager. My mom had gotten fed up and committed me to a psych hospital saying I was threatening to kill her and myself. It was actually really great and helped me kind of get zen. The day before I was supposed to be released, my mom came to visit to tell me my dad died during the night. Turned my life upside down and I was 2 steps behind where I started. Took me years to recover. At 29 years old I was diagnosed with stage IV breast cancer, terminal, which had already spread to my lungs and some ribs. Certainly changed the course of my life. Funny thing is I went to the doctor to have my lungs checked BC I was having trouble breathing on my long runs. For 6 years prior to that the lumps in my breast had been passed off as cysts and dense breast tissue. Nothing to worry about. You're so young. Husband and I were on and off in the early years of our relationship. We were in one of those off periods. In my mind the final one. When 2 lines appear after I peed on a stick. He did not biological children and I did not want another child. Yet here we are 8 years later. House in the burbs. 2 children. A dog. A dog that crossed the rainbow bridge. Just living the American dream. Note, we didn't get hitched until our youngest was almost 4. 13 years ago I was a global manager for a major tech company when my wife suddenly passed away. Leaving me alone with 3 young children. I retired from my job and spent the next decade focusing on my family. I remarried, had more kids and adopted still more. We have 8 in all. I am now a manager at a volunteer clinic, helping those who can't find or afford medical care. It actually just happened. Playing games with a good friend who attends another school studying something I'm passionate about. I make an offhand joke that I'll transfer and make his life miserable. He asks me why not. Not even a week later, and I'm transferring to a school 2 states away where I know literally one person to study something I dreamed of studying but never actually thought could be a reality. You know that dude? Lives halfway across the country. But you met because of gaming? That guy you hate with every fiber of your being? So much that you'll spend hours of your time making sure he doesn't get things he wants? Yeah? You're gonna marry him and be super happy. My parents were brutally murdered when I was a baby and I was sent to live with my abusive aunt and uncle and their spoiled brat son. Then on my 11th birthday a giant tore down our front door, gave my cousin a pig's tail, and told me I was a wizard. I used to be pretty overweight, around 50 pounds. I'd pretty much eat at a buffet once every week and had absolutely no intentions of stopping or losing weight. Plot twist, one fateful lunch, I went to Red Robin and ate a ton. I probably shouldn't have had that refill of fries, but I said, let's do this. I shouldn't have eaten dinner that night, but I thought, it's just a little bit of curry. Big mistake, or divine intervention. That night I had the worst heartburn in my life. I seriously thought I was having a heart attack and went to the hospital and all that. All I could pretty much eat was fruits, veggies, and oatmeal. So, this is pretty much all I ate 3 meals a day for the next several weeks. Sometimes I would eat some porridge with chicken, but that was kind of the limit. Anytime I ate anything slightly greasy, instant heartburn. It was Thanksgiving weekend and all I did was try a little bit of stuffing and bam, heartburn. So I was pretty much on chicken or fish, fruits, veggies, and my savior, oatmeal. I now eat oatmeal every morning with some apples and bananas and I'm still 50 pounds lighter. I was born in Mexico and came to the US when I was 3. I never knew the actual reason why until I was much older. Not only was it a plot twist when I found out, but it's a pretty big plot twist considering how my life could have been if it had not happened. My parents got involved in a pyramid scheme, which ruined them and many others financially. There was this one woman who got involved because of my mom and she blamed my mom for everything. She became obsessed, to the point where she was stalking my parents and leaving very threatening notes to them. The police didn't do anything about it and it got to the point where my parents were so scared for my safety that they decided to move to a different country. They figured that they could not only start over, since they sort of had to anyway because they lost all their money, but could also provide a better life for me or at least a safe one away from that lady. I often wonder how my life would have turned out if we never left, but I find it hard to imagine. So much of my life here, the experiences I've had have helped shape me so much that I really cannot picture the type of person I would be if things were different. Grew up a complete nerd, captain of the debate team, vice president of the Spanish club, doing well in all my classes, etc. Had a pretty bad home life, though, and I had a pretty terrible depression. Got into Yale for college and went, expecting to finally start to break free of my depression with my newfound independence, and actually started to do better. Then one week I went through a shitty breakup. My grandfather was put in a hospital, had a homophobic roommate say some shitty things, and broke down. Ended up in a psychiatric ward. My parents were informed of the situation without my consent, and had to take a lot of time away from school. The experience alienated me from a lot of friends and I had to start again as a freshman. That or when later, back at Yale, I had a friend commit suicide and I broke down again. My dean gave me poor advice in the wake of her death and I'm now on academic probation and not allowed back to Yale. Ended up spending some time now as a bartender, waiter, etc. Was sort of expected to go to college, get my degree, get a good job, start a family, etc. But instead I'm far behind everyone else doing jobs my family think of as embarrassing, but enjoying life a bit more. Though bitter at the institution and wanting to finish up my college degree, damn it. I am a male, and I grew up being interested in doing very feminine things. I hated sports. I was involved with theater throughout high school. I never dated or anything. So, my parents were constantly worried that I was gay. After college, I settled down and married the most wonderful woman on the planet. My parents were relieved. Plot twist, shortly after getting married, my sister came out of the closet and told them that she was gay.